Welcome to another episode of Conversations with the Co-op, where we explore key topics in special education. I'm Jeffrey Lee, K-12 Special Education Coordinator for the Paul Bunyan Education Cooperative. Today we're delving into the power of early intervention, particularly in relation to developmental delays, and the profound impact it can have on a child's education and lives beyond early childhood. I'm thrilled to have Emily Museus, Early Childhood Special Ed Coordinator here at the Co-op, joining me today. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here and talk about early intervention.
Emily, let's start with the basics. Could you help explain what early intervention is and why it's a crucial part of special education for children with developmental delays?
Absolutely, Jeff. Early intervention services are services that are provided to families and children ages birth up until their third birthday. Throughout early intervention, services are typically provided in the home and sometimes at childcare settings. Those services could be early childhood special education services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language services, and services from our consultants that focus on children with vision impairments and children with hearing loss.
So can I ask, you're saying that these professionals are going into households and helping families with those types of areas?
Correct. The services are provided in a child's natural environment, and so typically that's their home, and sometimes it's their home and their child care location, and they collaborate in both environments.
Nice. And I know we've had conversations before about, like, it looks a little different there too than it would, like, say, in special education in the school setting. I mean, besides it being in home, really the goals and everything are a little bit different there too. Is that right?
That's completely correct. In early intervention, we focus on whatever the caregivers or the parents or guardians determine is the priority. So once a child qualifies for services, then we really look to that caregiver to see what they want to work on and what's going to be most beneficial for them to support their child. And we also really focus on supporting the bond between the parent and the child as well, given that the child's delays.
Can you tell me a little bit about the daycare, those types of settings, the child care settings? Obviously the parents aren't there, but we're still working on some of those same types of skills there, I'm assuming?
Right, yeah. So in child care locations, whether that's a home daycare or whether that's a daycare center in our community, we're really focusing on coaching the adults in that facility on how to support the child during those natural routines. So given the child's delay, what can we do during diaper changes and during meal times to support and build the child's skills?
So to kind of put it in more of those educational, direct, indirect type of thing, this would be more indirect, where we're teaching the adults around the child kind of in those settings. Is that right, or am I reading it wrong?
I mean, I think depending on who's listening, indirect and direct can mean different things. If you're listening as a provider, as a special education provider, birth to 3 services do not have any indirect services. All services are considered direct from a technical standpoint on the education plan, but from a layperson's perspective, absolutely. The services are meant to be provided as coaching to the adults to support the child.
Okay, that makes sense. It is amazing how the different verbiage can really be confusing sometimes.
Absolutely.
But really, I think another key highlight there is that birth to 3, and then even some of that childcare type of stuff. That's a different realm than like elementary school or high school or whatever, right?
It's a really different realm, and I think early intervention teams across Minnesota kind of feel the separation between them and even preschool age special education services and certainly K-12. And sometimes there's people within the world of K-12 that don't even realize that the early intervention team exists, that teachers are actually going out into the home to support students and families.
Can you tell me, how does early intervention shape a child's educational journey and impact their lives beyond early childhood?
That's a great question. I, of course, have a biased opinion on the importance of early intervention as a provider myself, but I think it is incredibly important to start to establish the relationship with a student and certainly with the family for their educational journey. But when you think about it from a developmental perspective, 90% of a child's brain is developed by age 5. And so this early intervention is birth to 3. And so that's 3 of 5 very important years from a neurological perspective for brain development. And on top of that, early intervention is supporting that relationship between caregiver and child, and research has shown that the importance of that relationship to create resiliency and to the ability to cope with challenges and recover from setbacks. So when you look at long-term development, those 2 components play a huge role in a child's development. To me, that early intervention piece is really critical. The other aspect of that is because the child is young, sometimes that early intervention team is the first interaction that a family has with the school district. And so the early intervention team really needs to be sure that they're setting up that foundation for a trusting and collaborative relationship between the caregivers, the students, and the school district.
Yeah, I think that relationship is really important. And I think, when I had my first child, there were so many questions, so many things we didn't know. And we luckily had a great support network around us. But that isn't always the case, that sometimes those networks aren't there. And so it's nice to know that educational world can be there really early and help with that development. And I think kind of going back, it's shocking to me to think that 90% of the brain is developed by age 5, right? So we're really working on those pathways that gets more than just doing these simple little skills. It's helping that child develop long-lasting development, hence the name of the developmental delays, right? So that it's a great world that I think gets missed sometimes. Can you tell me what role collaboration between families and schools and communities plays in the success of early intervention programs?
Yes, I actually think you just hit on a piece of it in the comment that you just made about having a community of support when you had your first child to help lift you up and support you. Because as parents, I think we feel the weight of the world on us to know and understand everything about our child. But the reality is that this parenting piece is highly complex, and there's so many components. And the old adage of it takes a village rings true for so many parents.
Mm-hmm.
I think it rings true maybe a bit more for parents who are raising children with different needs or significant special education needs and significant medical needs. So the early intervention team can help collaborate with all of the other adults in that child's life, medical providers, occupational therapists and physical therapists and speech therapists from the clinic can collaborate with our OTs, PTs, and speech pathologists from the school district and cooperative. They can collaborate together and make sure that they're having common goals and using common language with the parents and caregivers.
I'm thinking of parents who maybe have children that they don't have a lot of peers that maybe have children the same ages. And so they might not always recognize what is average or typical, that it can be a little hard to come up with that. Is this something that's able to be helped with in early childhood, with those teachers coming in and helping with that?
Absolutely. I think that is something that our early intervention team does day in and day out with families, is to help parents and caregivers understand what is typical child development, and furthermore, not just what is typical, but they take where their child or student currently is, and they can help lay out what are the next expected skills for that child, because every kid's developmental trajectory is different. And so the team can really help lay out, here's what we should be working on next, and here's what we should be working towards as far as that child's unique development.
Imagine it's really difficult sometimes to work with some of these families who are kind of grieving a little bit with the disability. And so besides supporting the child, is there support kind of for the families too, to help them know and be there to be like that whole environment help?
Absolutely. I think that, and I'm speaking to the early intervention team that I know and the teams that I've worked with in other districts, their level of empathy and compassion for students and families is second to none. And their ability to come alongside the parents and support them through different diagnoses and understanding the unique challenges that their student may have, along with celebrating every little success that they experience from a child level and from a family level.
Wow, Emily, it's a fascinating world, and I'm really glad that you're able to share a little bit about it because it is difficult, I think, sometimes to see the different facets of special education and understanding how they all are kind of interconnected like that. And while I spend a lot of time in elementary and secondary world, that early childhood world is something that I know I'm constantly learning about, and just really appreciate all of that foundation and support that you guys give those families. Emily, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and inspiring insights into early intervention. It's clear how transformative this work can really be for children and their families. To our listeners, if you want to learn more about early intervention and connect with resources, don't hesitate to reach out to the co-op, visit our website. Emily, what would be a really good way? How do families on-ramp into this if they feel I've got a young child that needs some support? What would be some ways that they could access besides reaching out to the co-op themselves?
Parents or grandparents or anyone can go onto the website Help Me Grow and submit a referral for a child that they know or for their own child. But if you don't want to do that, you can always call whatever elementary school you are closest to or whatever early childhood center you are closest to. And you can just say that you want to talk to somebody about early intervention services, and they can connect you to that person.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate having you today.
You're welcome.
That wraps up this episode of Conversations of the Co-op. Please stay tuned for more thoughtful and provoking discussions. Until next time.